Hello my friends, and welcome back. It is I, Any Pride from Milk and Cookies Total War, and today we will be discussing some announcements on the Total War DLC side, setting the stage with some informed speculation about what we might expect in the next Lord Pack coming sometime this year, and looking forward to the future in the Total War Warhammer saga a little bit. But first, I want to start out this video with an apology. I understand over the last year and a half or so, I have taken some long breaks away from YouTube without really giving you guys fair warning, and that's not really fair to you. It was not planned, it wasn't my intent to leave you all in the dark, but I've never been one for update videos, and I never really knew how long I was going to be stepping away for, really. But the simple truth of the matter is, I've been covering Total War Warhammer for like 8 years now. Even more than that, if you're counting Call of Warhammer, I've been through dozens and dozens of early access periods, and the novelty has worn off to an extent. I'm not as excited about this trilogy now as I was 5 years ago, which should hardly come as a surprise to any of you. I'm not sure very many content creators would admit that, but I think most of them are probably feeling it. In fact, I'd venture to guess there is not a single content creator on YouTube who is as hyped to cover a game 5 years after launch as they are when they first got their hands on it before the general public, right? It's a natural feeling to have that excitement wane over time, and creating a lot of content outside of your standard go-to games can sometimes be even more detrimental to your channel than not uploading anything at all, such as the way of this platform. I wouldn't really call this burnout. I'm not oppressed or victimized in any way, shape, or form here. It's not like I'm overworked or anything. I just haven't felt as creatively inspired or challenged, and that's why I've taken some steps away. I still really like Total War games. I still plan on covering them well into the future. I like chatting with you all, and I like making videos, but sometimes I just don't want to. That feeling has reared its ugly head, certainly more often over the last year and a half than it did at any point previously. And honestly, I'd rather just make nothing at all than make bad content or content that I don't want to make. I want to be proud of the stuff I make. I want to be excited when I make it, and I've taken a lot of steps over the years to ensure that what I put together is of a fairly high quality on a fairly consistent basis, and it's harder to do that when I'm just not wanting to boot up the game at all. So what have I been doing in the meantime? Well, I went to Disney World with some friends from college. That was really fun. Guardians of the Galaxy ride at Epcot is absolutely incredible. Highly recommended. I went to TwitchCon with Italian Spartacus. I've done some traveling, some relaxing, some reading, a lot of For Honor, and a lot of Marvel Rivals, two games that I have an absurd amount of footage for and have really been enjoying. Haven't played all that much ranked in Marvel Rivals, but breezed through Diamond 3 and Diamond 2 fairly easily, and I'm now only a few wins away from Grand Master. Should hopefully be able to hit that before Season 2 begins. Lord on Thor, Venom, and soon to be Storm, with a lot of Rocket Raccoon games recently, in case you guys were wondering. But no, I do not plan on giving up on YouTube or Total War anytime soon. There is exhilarating content on the horizon for Darktide, Space Marine, and others that I would certainly like to cover. And in fact, if what I think and hope is going to happen over the next few years does indeed come to pass, we may not even have been to the golden age for this channel yet. And even when it comes to the Warhammer trilogy, there's still a ton to look forward to, obviously, including the Almighty Nagash, Thankwall, Neferata, and flavor editions from the End Times, including a whole bunch of other stuff. But I also don't want to pigeonhole myself quite as much as maybe I have done in the past. And while I've absolutely had a lot of success with certain games like Darktide, Space Marine, and Hunt Showdown, branching out into other topics that I really enjoy playing or discussing could help prevent that burnout type feeling when I just don't want to play Total War, and sometimes that feeling is inescapable. I believe I have a lot more left in the tank and could be making great videos for you to enjoy for many more years to come, but I do understand the channel has been hurt to some extent by my hiatus. I do understand that people on this platform come and go. Some will move on permanently, especially if you aren't posting regularly, and I have not been. So my sincere apologies on that front. I do not mean nor want to have your faith in me shaken. I will endeavor to be more consistent, more transparent, and more communicative moving forward. Really do appreciate all of your guys' comments, interactions, discussions, and having around you to watch and participate, even if on occasion you all piss me off. But it's been a super fun decade plus on YouTube, and here is to many more in the future. With that said, let's get into the topic of today's video. The next Total War Warhammer Lord Pack. As expected, Slaanesh the Dark Prince of Pain and Pleasure will be headlining as the main Chaos faction. Khorne, Tzeentch, Schnurgle all had their time in the sun. It's time for boob snakes and butt stuff. There were two potential legendary lords to fill this slot. It was either going to be the Masque of Slaanesh or Dechala the Denied One, and Double D is indeed going to be the freaky femme fatale who made the cut here. Well, let me clarify. She'll be the paid Lord for Slaanesh, but Dollars to Donuts, Masque will end up being the free LC Lord included in this update. That trend held true for both Thrones and Omen's last 2 DLCs, with Epidemius and Temercan for Nurgle, and Arbol and Skulltaker for Khorne. Expect the same here. Dechala as DLC, Masque as free LC. So let's talk about them. The new units that have thus far been announced, the ones that haven't, and what we can guess about the remaining holes in this picture as it pertains to factions and new toys to play with. Dechala is a former High Elf princess known as the Favored Concubine, leading the Tormentors subfaction somewhere in the Chaos Wastes in the lore, although I don't expect she'll start in the Wastes in the actual DLC. And her inclusion grants us some additional supporting evidence for the races that might be joining Slaanesh in this pack, because her backstory is one of pain, suffering, and utter hatred for the people that quite literally sold her soul to the devil. Her own family, her own race, the Azur, people who themselves had quite a long history with She Who Thirsts. Now, Dechala was born in northern Ulthuan in Nagaraith as the daughter of a mighty High Elven warrior who fought by Anarion's side during the Great Catastrophe, and her beauty was said to be so exquisite, the demon prince Samael was attracted by her and pursued Dechala and her family across Ulthuan. The demon promised her family he would leave them alone if they would hand Dechala over to him, and in an extraordinary moment of weakness, her father relented, leaving his daughter to the demon. As you might expect, this betrayal could quite literally not run any deeper. It pissed her off quite deeply, and it would have had the power to corrupt just about any soul on the planet, especially a High Elven princess, and instead of eternal torment in the ether, the demon simply warped her form into that of a sinuous serpent and whispered sweet nothings in her ear, promises of vengeance should she willingly give herself over to the Dark Prince. Imbued with the power to slaughter her family now, and with the newfound hatred of the Azur, very much expected and deserved, she was given a new body, milk white, snake-like, and with a scorpion tail and 6 arms, each armed with swords and armored, and after taking her revenge, she fled from her new demon prince husband and was faced with a rather interesting dilemma. Either she could return to Samael's embrace, losing more of her independence in exchange for ascension as a demon princess, or enjoy her newfound demonic freedom at the head of a powerful warband, with the caveat that she would never truly ascend to demonhood while Samael's essence existed in the warp. These were the choices given to her by the Dark Prince, and thus she has carved a name for herself throughout the ages, defiant but bitter, joining Arbol the Undefeated in his conquest of Ind during the End Times, and her story ends at the point of Tyrion's flaming sword, gutted by the Incarnate of Light. From a battle perspective, expect her to do what basically all Slaaneshi Legendary Lords do, which is move at 90+ speed with powerful debuffs, impact on enemy morale, poison, and ginormous dosages of armor piercing in a duelist type role. Do not expect her to be a world beater. She will need to be babysat. If she gets shot, she will be sad. You cannot allow her to get bogged down in infantry or peppered by ranged attacks, but a large problem for enemy characters, particularly mages and support lords, and for enemy cavalry on the flanks when supported by new toys. I do actually expect that she'll have a bonus versus infantry, considering dual weapons usually have that bonus versus infantry, and she's going to have 6 freaking swords, but that high AP is going to allow her to, and speed of course, going to allow her to engage cavalry on the flanks, and she might actually be a little bit better in the enemy mage hunting role or enemy lord hunting role and enemy cavalry hunting role with that speed than she will just sitting in the middle of infantry, because I don't expect her to have very high armor values and she'll probably just get whittled down. Maybe 60 to 80 armor, but nothing more than that I don't expect. She'll be joined by the Champion of Slaanesh, which is actually a single entity unit and not a hero. That has been confirmed. So presumably there will also be an exalted hero of Slaanesh coming in this update, but this champion will essentially just be a less killy version of her. Super fast, super poisonous, super deadly, but not quite on the level of Dechala. Pleasure Seekers are confirmed as well. Demonettes on boob snakes as a form of monstrous cavalry. Similar role to Seekers and Heart Seekers, but smaller in number and more elite in nature. And expect the boob snake to be made available as a mount in the same way that rot beasts were for Nurgle in Thrones of Decay. The Masque of Slaanesh, who I expect will be the free LC Lord, was once the most favored demonette in the Dark Prince's employ, dancer of peerless skill, but was cursed to disco eternally when he suffered his greatest loss yet in the Great Game. Her Dance of Dreaming plummets enemy leadership, her Flesh Spasm Polka impacts their weapon damage, and her Waltz of Lethargy slows them to a crawl as she dances endlessly across the battlefield. She will almost certainly have some of the most interesting idle animations in the trilogy thus far. Maybe bust out that twerking routine like She-Hulk. I know you guys loved that one. But yeah, she should be pretty fun to play with as well. On the battle side, what else do you feel like Slaanesh needs right now? I'd argue some more skirmish troops would be nice. They have a very blobby and one-note playstyle at the moment, especially against other melee factions like Khorne or Nurgle. You kind of just run at each other, play football, and either your flanking works or it doesn't, and you need to operate fairly compact, which is almost counterintuitive because you expect them to spread the field a lot, but in a 1v1 fight, your demonettes and stuff die very quickly. So while spreading the field is a thing to an extent, to hit the most enemies in a single debuff, you need to be fairly grouped up, and when you charge it from behind, you end up being in a big old blob and a big circle around the enemy force. I don't think it makes for as interesting a playstyle as it initially sounded like it would be on paper before the launch of Warhammer 3. I understand we aren't going to get Blissbarb archers or anything with a naming convention from Age of Sigmar, but it would be nice to see their skirmish options get accentuated a bit to maybe open up some more playstyles and kiting potential. One thing I'd really love to see are the Praetorians of Slaanesh, which are only ever mentioned in the Liber Chaotica, and there would have to be some rejigging, I think, because they're essentially noise marines from 40k, and Games Workshop wouldn't allow it if they actually looked like space marines or used true space marine sonic weaponry. But they're described as gigantic chosen with advanced gunpowder weapons that scream soul stuff in an ear-splitting cacophony, utilizing sound waves to obliterate their opponents, which, yeah, is pretty much noise marines, right? So elite, short-range, armor-piercing sonic weapons would open up some really cool playstyles, a unit archetype that we haven't truly seen in Warhammer 3 up to this point. And it's an element we've seen some glimpses of with the melee animations on the Soul Grinder of Slaanesh, but hasn't been implemented from a mechanical standpoint, and I think that would be really cool to see some actual sonic weaponry on the Slaaneshi roster. Archfiends are another option as well, a single entity monstrous upgrade over regular fiends, given some active abilities to differentiate it from the duelist role of the champion we know is coming. And I don't know how their chariots feel in the most recent patches, but they've been bad for a really long time, and Slaanesh with no elite chariot play feels wrong. It's one of those unique elements of their roster that really helps them stand out from the pack, but people don't bring them in campaign or multiplayer, and that is a shame. On the campaign side, please, God, do something about auto-resolve for them. Please. The game should never play itself. I don't want to be encouraged to auto-resolve everything the way I can with like a late-game Khorne army or Warriors of Chaos army, but Slaanesh takes it too far in the other direction. They just die in droves in auto-resolve because their lack of armor means they just explode. And there are simply some battles I should not have to fight. If it's like a tier 1 garrison and I have my big stack, I shouldn't have to worry about my elite demonettes or fiends getting dumpstered by an Empire Spearman in auto-resolve. That is very silly. It would be nice if speed, if melee defense, if weapon skill had a bit more impact on the auto-resolve function. But beyond Slaanesh and a handful of units, nothing else about this update is really confirmed so far. So now it's time to narrow it down based on logic and intuition when it comes to the other two remaining factions. I don't believe vampire counts are going to be in this one. I would not be mad at all if they were. As you know, I really think they need to get another update. I think Neferata is fairly thematic when it comes to Slaanesh. There could be plenty of interplay there with the seducing court of the Lamians and their politicking, intrigue, and sensual tension with the realms of men. But there's nothing explicitly tying her to Slaanesh in the form of a rivalry or anything, right? And I think both her and Nagash are best served headlining a true final undead DLC that hits the major pain points and finishes the VC, Tomb Kings, and potentially Vampire Coast rosters. Need those Bloodline Lords for sure. By that same token, I don't believe this update will include Cathay either. Tiger Men, Monkey Warriors, Li Dao the Fire Dragon as free LC, and the Monkey King as the headlining Legendary Lord feels a bit too big to pair alongside Slaanesh, and they're both Game 3 races. So while we just received an absolutely drop-dead gorgeous glimpse of their new tabletop models, some of which are even better looking than their counterparts in Total War, the Longma in particular, Miao Ying looks amazing. A lot of these units look so good on the tabletop, and it's fantastic to finally see them come to the old world. I think they need to wait a little bit longer, maybe for the next DLC in Total War Warhammer. So for me, that leaves some combination of Dark Elves, High Elves, and Norsca. Dark Elves and High Elves would be super thematic to pair alongside Slaanesh, and while Dark Elves absolutely do need some lovin' to update some of their older lords a bit and add in some form of Northern Fortress Watchtower mechanic, their roster isn't missing anything super pressing, and honestly, if they never got a true DLC again in this trilogy, I would not be super sad. I like the Dark Elves a lot. They're probably one of my favorite factions. They're certainly in like the top 5, top 6, but I don't feel like there's anything that's just absolutely needs to be added for them, right? Which on the other hand, probably makes them an ideal candidate when you're looking at that from CA's perspective, right? It's always a good thing in these triple Lord packs for one faction to be mostly done, and then you just add some bells and whistles and a little bit of an update here or there, and they're good to go. On the other hand, I don't think CA would want to include both High Elves and Dark Elves in the same DLC at this point, because it would mean if you don't like Elves, you just straight up wouldn't get it, and they want to hedge their bets a bit and give at least a bit more diversity in these bigger packs to cast that net wide as possible, right? So my bet is High Elves and Norsca here. Something fairly similar to what I found here from Sir Uncle Dunk, who I know was a viewer for quite a long time, hopefully still is. Hopefully you can see him in the comment section down below. Appreciate you, sir, for compiling this. I believe he put this together more than a year ago, and it's, in my opinion anyway, a very solid prediction. Maybe not perfect, probably not going to be perfect, but should frame the coming DLC nicely and give you a good idea of what to expect. Honestly, though, I am less sure about this one than I was for, like, Thrones of Decay, which, of course, was spelled out so nicely for us in the Tamarkan Thrones of Chaos book. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get an entire race wrong here. But High Elves are very logical, right? They have a built-in rivalry with Slaanesh and Dechala specifically, and they need some campaign updating for sure. They were the economic gods of Warhammer 2, but those days have long since passed with the changes to Entrepreneur and other elements of their casters and tech tree and what have you. And while Lord Aislinn isn't exactly on my list of most exciting Warhammer characters, there's a thematic and fun roster that could drop alongside him, opening up the waterways and combining the best elements of the Vampire Coast and the Azure together, namely with shipbuilding. And that is an important point to make, is that the Azure and Warhammer Fantasy are a top 1, top 2, top 3, probably top 1 naval power in the entire setting. Black Arcs are the strongest ship, arguably, but dragon ships can sink them, and the High Elves probably have the advantage when it comes to naval power. We haven't seen that get emphasized a whole lot in Total War Warhammer up to this point, and there's a lot of ocean around Ulthuan, particularly Galleon's Graveyard and that area in the middle of the world, that they could do a lot of stuff with if you got a lord that, you know, could sail the high seas. Just in general, we haven't had too many naval lords in this trilogy up to this point, especially considering how much water's on the freaking map. Might be a good time to update Wulfric the Wanderer's shipbuilding with Seafang as well. Lothern Skycutter, Murworm, Sea Helms, and Caradrian, Captain of the Phoenix Guard, would all make great additions. When it comes to Norsca, they probably need the most work out of the 3 when it comes to campaign improvements. I personally haven't played a Norsca campaign in years. I am not an expert on them by any stretch of the imagination, but they are severely outdated now. Monster hunts are missing any and all monsters that came after base game Warhammer 2. It means they don't even have like Tomb King stuff, I don't think. They don't have anything from Warhammer 3. Throg needs to not be the hyper dumb, brute, fat tub of lard that CA made him, so a model and voice line rework would be very much appreciated. Wulfric shouldn't be fighting off the back of a mammoth, but should get big buffs on foot to compensate losing his mount, and there are a whole myriad of other issues to address to bring Norsca back up to speed. But I like the idea of Bjork Bearstruck for sure, a werebear shapeshifter, and while some don't like the idea of him leading units of bears, or bear shapeshifters, because it takes away from his own unique element, I'd argue Rule of Cool applies here, and the simple bare necessity of life is that we need more bears in Warhammer. Bears are dope. Sail the Faithless as the headlining Caster Legendary Lord, also a character from Tamarkan Thrones of Chaos, and generic Shaman Caster Lords would immediately have a huge impact on the diversity of this roster and really open up a lot of options. So in the coming days and weeks, we'll go further in depth with some of these ideas as yet more is revealed, but for now, I think we're going to call it. I have a really good Sub-Commanders 3v3 recorded and so much footage from so many different games from the last several months, including test server footage from the Trigon Space Marine 2 operation. They just haven't been made into videos yet, but I will definitely be doing some more Total War battles soon. I've got For Honor footage for like 12 different characters, like hundreds of hours of footage, A lot of Marvel Rivals stuff, which is a surprisingly good game. Probably the best thing to happen to Marvel since like Infinity War, and some other fun stuff as well. So if there's anything specific you want to see from this coming DLC or video topics you want me to cover, please do let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Any Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.